Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. That's March 16th, 2020. Abhayagiri Monastery, Lunar Observance Day, half moon waning. Got a couple of weeks left in the winter retreat. Shout out to the live stream. Hello, everybody watching the live stream. Hope you're all doing well and taking this opportunity to be in your home practicing. A couple nights ago, Luangpa was bringing up the Anurakana Kammatthana, the four protective kammatthanas, or the four protective meditations, contemplations, practices, and just by way of reviewing, I think those are just worth bringing to mind. Just that one, Buddha Nusati, or recollection of the Buddha, the qualities of the Buddha, or in any way that we want to recollect the Buddha, or say the Buddha within, awareness, and so on, or even the historical Buddha. So Buddha Nusati. 2, Metta Bhavana, or the cultivation of goodwill, Metta. 3, the Asubha Kammatthana, or the contemplation, recollection, seeing into the unbeautiful aspect of bodies. And 4, Marananusati, a recollection of death. That these 4 practices are the Anurakana Kammatthana, or the 4 protective meditations. Buddha also said that sila is a great protection for us. So there's many ways we can use the practice to have that sense of safety, security, and Luangpa went into detail about that on the Saturday night a couple nights ago. So that's not necessarily the theme of this talk, but just to bring it to mind by way of reminding or reviewing, and not to forget what was said that evening. Right now at Abhayagiri, it's quite beautiful out in the forest, and snow has been falling. It's been snowing and raining, and so we have some moisture. The air is very, very fresh. I was just delighting in walking up to my kuti in the snow and just breathing in the cold, fresh air. Just very, very enjoyable, very pleasant, and just appreciating what we have here, the physical surroundings. One thing I thought of for tonight was There's a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fours, and it's ways to know people. And there are these 4 different ways you can know people, but to know people through these 4 different ways, one has to have discernment, and one can only know through long association with other people and not through just short association. And so one is through dwelling together with somebody, their virtuous conduct can be known, but only if you have discernment to notice what should be noticed, and only after a long period of time. So by dwelling together with somebody, say in a community, their virtuous conduct or lack thereof can be known. 2 is by dealing with somebody or having dealings, working with somebody, their integrity can be known. And that's, but only if you know what to look for, only after a long period of time of noticing these things. And 3 is, in a time of misfortune, one's fortitude can be known. And 4 is through conversation, one's wisdom and discernment can be known. So, of course, just coming to mind the point 3 there of, in times of misfortune, one's fortitude can be known. And that this also dovetails with, say for me, that dovetails with the contemplation of death, the Marananusati. So what's our relationship with death? What's our relationship with illness? What's our relationship with these inevitable things that are going to happen to us? And are we able to say, right now, are we able to say, everything's okay? Everything's okay right now, in the moment. In this moment, right now, everything is okay. It's like breathing in, breathing out, just taking a deep breath in, and a deep breath out. Everything's okay. Not everything's gonna be okay. So everything's gonna be okay, that phrase is fear-based, isn't it? It implies it's not okay now, but it's gonna be okay. Well, hopefully, maybe, well, or probably not, actually. But if we say everything's okay, if we just use that as our kammatthana, use that as our object, as our meditation, just okay, everything's okay right now. And then remembering that some of the Buddha's teachings on the hindrances were when there's various hindrances in the mind, those are things which weaken our discernment, weaken our wisdom, weaken our ability to make wise decisions. So like going through the 5 hindrances, and that's sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. So say like the 4th hindrance, restlessness, worry, panic, these are weakening discernment. So if we're able to say, breathing in, breathing out, everything's okay, the discernment's going to function a lot more in that space. Or I remember reading like one of these wilderness survival manuals one time, and had a little section on what to do if you panic, and specifically like people who get lost in the forest, because that's one main reason people die or people get injured when they get lost, is because they panic. And when they panic, they lose all their discernment and they start running around and they end up either injuring or doing severe harm to themselves. So if we see it, according to this survival manual, if one sees panic starting to come on, the very best thing you can do is take a few deep breaths and sit down for a while. Essentially meditate. Meditate is the best thing you can do. So sit down for a while, half an hour, take some deep breaths. Once you've calmed down, take a look around, take stock of the situation. Where are you at right now? In 2010, Lungpo Pasano invited me to go to Ladakh with him, and we were there for the month of June 2010, and wonderful trip. We traveled around, saw different monasteries, and Ladakh is a very interesting place. It's rain shadow of the Himalayas, so it's like north and west of the Himalayas, technically in India, but it's more Tibetan in its landscape and in its culture, its people. And it's very, very dry, so although they get snow melt, they're surrounded by snow-capped mountain peaks. The whole landscape is very, very dry. Very little rain ever falls there. And the mountains are built up of like dust and very, very loose rock and gravel. And the year after we were there, Ajahn, a dear friend, a senior monk, Australian monk, he went there the year after we were there, and they had this really strange, unseasonal rainstorm that what it did was it turned these mountains of dust into these like mudslides of like really fine mud, and it was a huge disaster. And one of these mudslides came down, and it covered something like 300 people, and was really a horrible tragedy for that area, and really almost unheard of that something like that would happen there. But he was in a different part of Ladakh around that time that these rainstorms were happening, and he happened to be in this little village. And this little village was next to a big river, and because of these unusual rainstorms, the level of the river was rising very quickly and going to flood this village, and there's nowhere to go. There was just mountain peaks, like steep walls on both sides. So if the river were to come up, it would just wash everybody away. There's just nowhere to go. And the river is coming up very, very fast, and it looks like it's going to come up, and people are starting to panic. And Ajahn was there with his people, some of his supporters, and so the people in this small village are starting to panic, and the river's rising, and it's raining. It's never happens like this, and the thought comes up: we might die here. If this raging river comes up and overtakes this village, there's nowhere to go, nowhere to run to. And so he thought, well, if I'm going to die, what do I want to be doing? And he thought, well, I'd like to die meditating. So he just was outside in the middle of this village, and the river is rising. You can see it. It's not too far away. He just started meditating, and his supporters around him started meditating. And then eventually these villagers who were running around saw them, and they started meditating. And then it was like this spreading out circle of meditation, and then almost everybody was meditating. So without saying anything, they got it, and it was like, okay, best thing we can do right now is sit down and meditate. And then, of course, as what usually happens with these things, the river came up just to the point where it was going to overtake the village, and then it just sort of stayed at that level, and then started dropping a little bit, and everybody was okay. And, I just like that as an example of a real life story of what we can do, and when we're faced with misfortune. And the Marananusati, one of the effects that can have on us if we do it properly, we're not doing the death contemplation in order to make ourselves more afraid or depressed. But if we do the death contemplation properly, one aspect being that death is absolutely inevitable. That's a certainty for all of us. And there's also the uncertainty aspect, which is that we have no idea when or how it will happen. And one thing this can do is actually cut through, say, unrealistic proliferations about the future. And it's what we're doing when we think about the future or we're fearing the future is like the sankhara. There's the sankhara, which is like me, like the sense of self in the future. And then there can be the requisite fear or hope or longing or whatever. There's that sense of me in the future. And that's very connected with delusion as well. So it's just a sankhara, it's just an idea. So with the Marananusati, it's taking us back to, okay, well that's really not sure. That's not a sure thing. That one, the Buddha taught anatta, so that me in and of itself is a delusion anyway. And then to say me in the future, that's like compounding. That's compounding it. So it really brings us back to the present. And the Marananusati can be very freeing, very liberating in many ways, very cooling for the heart, for the mind. We just come back to that sense of, it's okay, now, this is the way it is. It's like the story of when Luang Por Cha was practicing in a charnel ground, and he had so much fear of ghost coming up, and even at the point they brought a body into the charnel ground, and this is in the biography in Stillness Flowing, and they bring a body in, and it's fairly close to where he's sitting under his glot, under his monk's mosquito net, and then the fear is coming up, and then at some point during the night, hearing actual footsteps coming toward his mosquito net, and the fear like reaching this like breaking point, the fear of death. But then having this really strong realization, well, where is death? Is it out there somewhere? And then he realized, well, death is within me. I carry this around all the time with me. So this very leading to insight type of reflection. It can also bring us back to like what's really important. What's really important. One thing I'm kind of enjoying right now is there's a very small group physically present here this evening. Probably even regulars, like I notice Sandra and Kristen aren't in the room, even though they're locals, so they're probably watching the live stream. And hello, if you're watching the live stream, and hope everything's okay. And but social distancing, so people are staying at home. But it's nice having this small group here, and it makes me think of, this is what's really important. We're coming together and practicing together, and it's something that is wonderful, I think, about the monastery, or about Dhamma Vinaya, about the Buddha's teaching in general, is that it can't really be institutionalized. Like, there was this concern that I had early on, or others, and that concern was compounded when we demolitioned the old bungalow, the old house, which was kind of the heart, the center of Abhayagiri for so long, and this little house with its little library and kitchen and who knows what else, mice, rats living in the walls or whatever, and just like this feeling of like family, like a big family, or a very home-style energy, thinking, we're building this new big hall, it's going to be more institutionalized, but the Dhamma Vinaya, the teaching of the Buddha, it's all about the heart, and the heart just can't be institutionalized. It's just the way it is. It's just something I find wonderful and marvelous about the Buddha's teaching. And we have this kind of place here for practice, and it's a very good facility for practice, but we're not dependent on this place in terms of being monastics. We can hit the road, and we still have our precepts, we still have our practices, and we can do that anywhere. It's just that these facilities here provide a really excellent container for being able to live and practice, and for others to join in with that. But there's very much this sense of big family, and a sense of not quite being institutionalized. I really love that. So that's what's important, is a sense of coming together and studying, practicing Dhamma. That's really, not just now, but always, I think the best thing we can be doing is meditating, reciting suttas, and cultivating goodwill for one another. These are all super important. That's the metta bhavana. So that's, again, one of the protective meditations, protective contemplations. And we talk about social distancing, and as monastics, we're sort of pros at this, and we call it solitude. And it's one of the reasons I ordained. Get away, social distancing. And so this is, in a sense, it's like trying to use any misfortune, any opportunity as a good opportunity for practice. So if we have to stay at home, we get this monastic experience. And solitude is very much an acquired taste. It's not something that we're necessarily used to. And stay at home, and of course there's things to do at home. Watch TV, watch YouTube, whatever. But if we're not going out to games or concerts or shows or whatever, then we got some solitude, staying at home, and it is a good opportunity to kind of slow down. So everybody has to slow down, and not, we don't need to run around so much, don't need to travel so much. We just try to cultivate that sense of contentment where we're at. So that's, it's not a bad thing. So we're continuing to do readings as well in the morning time, and various people might be plugging into that online as well. And Debbie did a really wonderful reading. It was from Ajahn Munindo, and he was recollecting some of the early days of his practice. For those of you who don't know, he's a very senior monk in our lineage, and the abbot of one of the monasteries in England, Harnham Forest Monastery, Forest Hermitage, and he's talking about his practice in Thailand in the early days with one of the well-known disciples of Ajahn Mun. His name is Ajahn Tate, and recollecting some of the hardships and trials he went through in those early days. And whenever we take up solitude, or we take up, say for us, for myself as a monk, we take up the monastic life, the monastic training, then unless you're a very, very rare type of person, it's always going to entail some sort of hardship and difficulty. But then we learn how to not necessarily trust everything that comes up in the mind, and stay the course. We try to stay the course, and we take on this training, these precepts. And what we come up against is our own minds, our own hearts. And normally the way it goes is we've spent most of our life seeking distractions of various kinds so we can maintain a sense of mediocrity where we don't really have to look at the suffering inside, because we're looking outside. And once we try to stop and we take away most, if not all, of our distractions, then we start to look at the mind and the heart and say, oh, it's pretty difficult. Sometimes we don't like what we see in there. But, of course, we have this intuitive sense that it's so much better to look at it and see it than to keep ignoring it. So those of us who come to the practice, there's that intuitive sense that's driving us. And one time these concrete workers were here and doing some of the initial work on this reception hall, this building. And we asked that the workers not listen to music while they're working here. So something very normal that construction workers listen to music. And felt like one of the concrete workers really got it. He's like, "You mean I gotta listen to my own crazy ass mind?" And yeah, that's what happens when you don't listen to music. But I thought he has some wisdom. He actually saw that that's what's happening. So that is what's happening. That's what we're that's what we're doing here. And it's I remember something Luangpur Liam was teaching is that when with dukkha, the first noble truth, seeing dukkha, there is dukkha, seeing dukkha, acknowledging dukkha, how difficult it is just to get over that first hurdle of acknowledging dukkha, seeing dukkha. It's very difficult actually to admit to ourselves there is dukkha. It's like Luangpur Liam saying that dukkha, to see dukkha, to get through dukkha, you go through dukkha, like you don't. Talu tuk or pon tuk, my talu, my pon. So it's like if you go through dukkha, you can escape dukkha. If you're willing to look straight at it, straight into it, and go through it. But if you can't do that, if you're always kind of sidestepping it or getting away from it in other ways, then you won't escape from it. You won't truly escape from it. So like the only way is through, right through the center. But that's difficult because it's this body and mind. It's like all of our thoughts and emotions, they're so real. That is our experience. Our experience of life is our experience of our thoughts and emotions. And the dukkha, or not only the dukkha, but the sukha as well, the happiness. So the happiness and the suffering, these things are two sides of the same coin. They have the same value. So eventually what we come to is the worldly winds. We're always trying to run toward happiness and run away from suffering. And thinking it's somewhere else, thinking it's outside. And not seeing that it's inside. And what we come to then is knowing. Knowing. It's so simple. Knowing happiness and suffering, rather than running toward happiness and running away from suffering. So just knowing. Knowing is the sati response. Knowing is the leading to liberation response. Letting go is skillful response. When we skillfully respond in this way by just knowing, by knowing what's in the mind, what's in the heart, by knowing what's in the present, knowing our experience, then we'll be able to cool ourselves down from running toward happiness and running away from suffering, running toward pleasure, running away from pain, running toward status and reputation, running away from ridicule and loss of status, loss of reputation. Running toward happiness, running away from suffering. Running. We'll stop running. We'll stop running around. Come back to the center. One of the other amazing things about the Dhamma that I really like is the fact that nothing is fixed. So this is where the truth of anicca, or the truth of impermanence, we start using it in a way where it's to our advantage. rather than, death, impermanence. These things are, what am I going to do? We can use impermanence or uncertainty or the fact that nothing is fixed to our advantage. That which is defiled can become pure. That which is unbalanced can become balanced. That which was uncentered can become centered. That which is fraught and distraught and worried can become still and peaceful. That which is bound up can be liberated. And that which is upset can be calmed. That which is greedy can be overcome, can be stilled. And nothing is fixed. And that's where anicca starts to work for us, where if things were fixed, there'd be no hope for liberation, no hope for spiritual cultivation, no hope for the deeper sense of deep happiness that comes from peace, that comes from that knowing of the happiness and suffering that we're normally caught up in, that deeper sense of well-being. The kind of paradox is that it's comes from that sense of it's okay in the present. But then, as life continues to flow, and there's that sense of everything's okay now, we're always in now, and life flows with that attitude, with that new attitude that we can cultivate. From there, the barami starts to build up the spiritual qualities. That's spiritual cultivation. When we're able to come back to that sense of it's okay now, in the present. Things arise, how can I respond? How can I be skillful about this? What's the skillful response? When we know something clearly, see something clearly, then what's the skillful response to that particular situation? What's arising right now? Well-being, peace, fear, worry, fear arising. So, okay, I can know that. What's the skillful response? Well, I'm not gonna follow it. This investigation, contemplation, further knowing. What's actually happening here? How have I been using my 6 sense bases? How have I been using the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind? What have I been allowing into my eyes? What have I been allowing into my ears? How does that inform my experience? So this is just the way of the contemplative. Always bring it back to that inner experience. And that allows us to then really connect with our inner experience and say, okay, well, what am I letting in? Yeah, I'm staying at home. We're staying in the monastery. We're not going anywhere. We're very socially distant. We're well distanced. We're well socially distanced. And what am I letting in? What am I letting into my eyes? What am I letting into my ears? What am I letting the eyes contract? What am I letting the ears contract? And what am I letting the mind contract? Am I contracting a sense of dis-ease, of well-being, of a dis-ease or of a lack of well-being? What am I contracting when I sit in meditation and I don't run after pleasure and don't run away from pain? What am I contracting when I have that sense of knowing and clear awareness and mindfulness? Something very desirable, something good. There's this wonderful biography some of you may have read. It's the Enlightened Vagabond, the biography of Patrul Rinpoche, eccentric, great Tibetan yogi who lived in the a couple centuries ago, a century and a half ago or so, and a number of collected stories which they've compiled into a sort of biography. And he was just a wanderer, and he was known for not making a show of himself, and it wouldn't always be clear. I believe he had novice ordination, but he didn't have the full monk's robes that he wore. So, but a great yogi, great practitioner, like a Tudong monk, he would wander the countryside, and sometimes he would be invited to stay with people. And there was a nomad family who let him into their tent one time as an old grandmother and like a granddaughter, and they said, "You can stay at the other side of the tent." And the grandmother whispered to her granddaughter, "Don't get near him. You might contract something," because he's kind of this kind of disheveled wanderer, and then he overhears them say this and kind of smiles to himself, and then he, at some point, they start having some sort of conversation with him. I can't remember exactly the story, but he gives this whole teaching about it'd be quite fortunate for you if you could contract what I have. And basically, he goes into this exposition of his different teachers. He said, from this teacher I contracted, great love and compassion, and from this other teacher I contracted, wisdom and the insight into Dhamma or whatever. And just that flipping it on its head and saying be most fortunate if you could contract knowledge and wisdom of the Dhamma, contract love and compassion in your heart, make it stick. Don't ever let it yourself be cured of it. Let it stay inside of you. So those are just a few thoughts. I guess the main point being just to have that willingness to come back and have that sense of things are okay right now, having help. And that can help us to, at any time really. That's just an important aspect of practice to be able to do that and to have that sense of ease and lightness for any time really. That's always going to be helpful for us. And so not too many words are coming to me this evening, but hopefully that's helpful for people, and I'll leave it at that for now.
Anamayam Namakataya Sadhu Karam Tatamase